You're listening to Wildlife Control Consultant, where we provide research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another podcast of the Wildlife Control Consultant. So, glad to have you on board. I hope your week went well. I am moving into my busy season. You say, well, Stephen, your whole summer was pretty busy. Yes, yes, that is certainly true, but now my day job is starting to kick into higher gear, so we are in the training season. So some good things happening. Looking forward to doing a presentation at a rodent academy. So that should be kind of neat. So hope your time is well, that your summer went okay. We're now in the month, for me, it's when I'm recording this, I'm in the month of September, so things are starting to cool off. This is part of my favorite time of the year here where I live. So I hope you're looking forward to the future as well, and that your business is going well. Well, if you're wondering what we're all about here in the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast, we're all about technical information on all things related to vertebrate pest management. So if this is a subject you're interested in, well, you've come to the right place. We are all about, again, the technical side. So we kind of get into some deep dives. This isn't just simply how to set a trap, but we're getting into some questions and issues that require some expertise and some research and things that just don't get learned necessarily by experience alone, that it requires sometimes academic research involved with it. So we do get into some other issues, but nevertheless, we try to be pretty technical here. If you have ideas for future shows, you can definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Yes, even criticisms of the show. We'll take those as well. If you're looking to be a guest on the show, definitely reach out to me. But please first take a few moments, do a little search for being a guest on the show. Did a podcast back, I believe, in June of 2025, and basically listed some issues and things for you to think about before you come onto the show, but we would love to discuss that with you. All right, well, just a reminder of some of the materials that I offer in training sources. I do ghostwriting, of course, also work on people's PowerPoints, and provide training opportunities, and this is some of the material I sell through my website. If you're interested in getting some training materials, I know a lot of people don't like to read anymore, but sometimes there are things that you just need to sit down and read analog. God forbid, right? Someone read a book nowadays. But nevertheless, also have some other products that you may be interested in. If not, if you don't see it, reach out. We may be able to try to help you in that regard. We also do targeted training. Perhaps you're a business owner and there's specific vertebrate pest training that you're interested in having. Definitely reach out to me. We would love to hear from you and see if we can meet the needs that you have for your workers, or perhaps even yourself. Okay, enough of all that. So what are we going to talk about this week? Well, I came across a rather interesting article about toxicoses in cats. Now, that may be a strange phrase for you here. Let me kind of pull up the PowerPoint that I've created. And you're wondering, what is toxicosis? Well, it's basically poisoning of cats. So you're like, why would we want to talk about poisoning of cats? There are no legal poisons for cats, at least in the U.S., and that is certainly true. The problem comes in if you get a call from a client who says, hey, my cat's been acting weird after your last rodenticide service, and I've come back from the vet. The cat is now getting blood work done and now being overnighted for observation, and they want you to pay for it. That's going to be a gut check if there ever was one. You're like, oh, I have a client here who thinks that I'm the person, or my workers have poisoned her cat because we're doing rodent control. on her property, or perhaps it's a neighbor's cat, right? Because again, in the United States, we don't like to restrain our cats. We think that somehow there's a constitutional right for cats to roam free and of course predate the wildlife, but that's of course a subject for another podcast. But nevertheless, you're getting that call, or your office staff is getting that complaint. Oh, what are you going to do with that? Well, let's talk a little about, so this is an interesting article I came across, and what are you going to do? So my first suggestion for you to do, of course, is collect the information that you're going to get from the client, of course, who is complaining, or perhaps the person who's accusing you or suggesting that your company is at fault. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just giving you some suggestions on the process. I am going to suggest that you reach out to your insurance agent. Your insurance agent can certainly give you some advice on what you should say and what you should not say. You want to be very, very careful. You want to start gathering, of course, your literature, because, of course, if you as a commercial applicator, you're going to have record keeping, and this is where that record keeping becomes so important. So I hope you're training your workers on that. And then I'm also probably going to suggest perhaps you look for an attorney who has some familiarity with pest control work and perhaps even people's pets and the laws regarding that, because this could get sticky, of course, in a hurry. But certainly you want to make sure you're reaching out to your insurance agent and your attorney and gathering up your evidence, and be careful what you say. Certainly you want to be careful what you write. You want to be empathetic, and you want to be careful because you don't know what the facts are, right? So it may not be anything involved with what your company has done at all, and that's what makes this article so valuable as background information for you as a company owner. So let's take a look at this particular article. The article title is called "The 10 Most Common Toxicoses in Cats." It's written by Valentina Meroa. She's a doctor of veterinary medicine, along with Eric Dunayer, who is a master's of science and also a VMD. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, VMD, but maybe a veterinary medical doctor. I don't know, but a DABT, that's another acronym I am not familiar with as well. But certainly these folks have some education behind them, and it's a peer-reviewed article. And it was published in the magazine called Veterinary Medicine in June of 2006, pages 339 through 342. So it has it's written in English. It's not an academic piece. It's basically kind of a survey that they collected from call 4 years at a clinic that they were involved with, or a clinic that they're associated with, or got the data from. The data of complaints 4 years prior to them writing this particular article. And their information's kind of telling, so I thought it would be of interest for people who might get that call about a cat being exposed or not acting right after you did a service call. Let's take a look. So understand that the causes of cat injuries and issues and medical problems are myriad, and so they only discussed what they saw was the 10 most common that they encountered at this particular clinic's data. And so we're going to go through them like a top 10, 1 to 10, right? So the top 10 may be different today here in 2025 than it was in 2006, but nevertheless, you're going to get the point. Namely, that there are a variety of things that could cause harm to cats. It's something just to keep in mind, to take a deep breath when you get that call, because it may not be your fault. Okay, so the first one that they mentioned was called canine permethrin insecticides. And so these, of course, are used. Often they're surface applications or exterior applications to dogs to keep fleas and ticks off of them. Of course, sometimes people misapply them to cats. And that can cause tremors and seizures in cats who are exposed to this. Sometimes it's when a cat is laying up against a dog that was treated. Now, this can be from sometimes just sort of an exterior treatment, or perhaps the dog has been dipped, right? I don't think they do a lot of dipping anymore, but nevertheless, this is where the cat would be exposed, and the signs can appear within 24 to 72 hours, right? So perhaps, you did a service the day before, and all of a sudden the cat is starting to act tweaky, and they blame you because you were there, even though they forgot. Maybe the dog got exposed, or maybe they exposed the cat directly because the cat had fleas. Who knows, right? So this number 2 was other topical insecticides. And what they found is that cats will lick it off of their body, which is a normal behavior for cats. And then they get this hypersalivation. So the cat isn't really being poisoned per se, although it's probably not good for the cat. But the cat is reacting to tasting of the insecticide, and so it starts, having more saliva coming out of its mouth. It starts getting agitated, and there may even be vomiting involved. Therefore, people are thinking, hey, the cat has been poisoned, right? Number 3 is venlafaxine, and this is an antidepressant that us humans will take, and so sometimes the cat will eat them. Like maybe you have the pills on top of a counter, and the cat begins to chow on it, right? So I have a cat, and the cat loves to eat, so it's always exploring, looking for food, right? So maybe your client's cat is similar to that. But what they found is that, of course, there are a variety of different dosages in these particular capsules, because obviously people would have different dosage needs. What they found was that a cat can have symptoms with less than the smallest capsule, which would be the 37.5 milligram capsule, is enough to cause less than that. So the cat doesn't have to eat the entire capsule, can just eat part of it. All right, and so it's still good enough to be vomiting, develop rapid breathing, have a rapid heartbeat, have weakness and agitation. Okay, you're going to see a lot of these symptoms and signs are going to be quite repetitive among a lot of these particular toxicosis events, right? These poisoning events, I guess, to use a more common terminology. One of the key symptoms of this particular exposure is the cat's pupils just go really big. You ever see a cat that's scared to death, right? Their eyes get extraordinarily big and their pupils are just exploding, right? That's a very common, that seems to be a sign of this particular exposure. Now, I want you to be careful. Do not assume that just because you see some of these symptoms that you become a doctor for a veterinary doctor, and you start diagnosing what the cat has. Don't go down that road. The purpose of this is not for you to be diagnosing the cat. The purpose of this is that you understand that there can be a variety of symptoms that are the same but have different underlying causes, right? So keep this in mind so that you take a breath if and when you get that particular phone call accusing you of poisoning their cat. Glow sticks, which was kind of weird, right? Glow sticks. And so it seems that cats will bite into them, and I guess glow jewelry as well, and that there's an ingredient that I guess causes them to glow called dibutyl phthalate. And this is an oily liquid that I guess has an extremely unpleasant taste. So the cat bites into the jewelry or the glow stick, and it reacts to the bad taste. So it's not really like swallowing it per se, although it certainly could happen. The cat is not likely to be poisoned by it in the sense, but it's reacting, and of course then someone says, hey, you poisoned my cat. So hypersalivation again, vomiting if there's some of that goes down, and sometimes if you have a bad taste in your mouth, you could retch too. I guess that can happen with cats. And then of course agitation with the cats. The LD50 here is 8 grams per kilogram, and so the authors suggested that there's a relatively high safety mark for cats because they're unlikely to eat it per se in enough quantity to cause any long-term harm. But of course, it can be quite traumatic to watch your cat retching on the floor after he's bitten into this, and maybe you didn't know that he bitten into it, and you're blaming the pest control operator at this particular point. Lilies, of course, there are certain plants that if pets eat, it can be quite serious for them because of the chemicals involved in those particular plants. And so they mention 2 different groups of lilies. One of them is called the lilium species, which is along like your Easter lily, and then the Hemerocallis species, which be along the lines of your daylilies. Both of those particular genuses will have poison effects on cats should the cat decide to start eating it. What are some of those symptoms? Again, hypersalivation again. In other words, they're starting to drooling, vomiting, and of course agitation. And when do those symptoms emerge? They can occur within 24 to 72 hours. So the cat may have eaten a lily 3 to 3 days prior to your applying the rodenticide, and all of a sudden starts to exhibit symptoms, and of course you get blamed for poisoning the cat, right? I'm wanting you to kind of see how complicated it is for someone to accuse you of poisoning their cat. So what's number 6? Well, liquid potpourri, right? So a lot of people like to have these materials to sort of make their house smell good, or perhaps there's a particular fragrance that they like to have around. And what they said was, of course, potpourri covers a variety of different products and chemicals, and so they said those that have cationic agents, they can affect a central nervous system of the cat. They can cause gastrointestinal issues with your cat, and of course affecting the oral mucosa. That's that hypersalivation, perhaps irritation up there, but also can get into that depression and then lowered blood pressure on the cat as well. Those liquid potpourris that are made of essential oils, for example, they can cause gastrointestinal issues, oral irritation, and of course central nervous system depression. So again, it's kind of a potpourri of symptoms as well, right? And so you just don't know, but if a cat starts drinking some of this, there could be some issues there as well. Here we get into NSAIDs. Now, NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. As we become an aging population in the United States, a lot of us are starting to take these as our body is showing the effects of abuse of when we were younger and we played hard and worked hard, right? So we're getting the arthritis, and so these are pain medications that we're using to sort of make our joints feel a little bit better as we're moving around. Sometimes, as cats have arthritis as well, people may actually give the cat some of these NSAIDs, and thinking that they're helping the cat. And unfortunately, the cat may result in vomiting, again, gastrointestinal issues, of course, diarrhea, can be bleeding because these are blood thinners, just like aspirin, for example. Ulcer perforation, if your cat has an ulcer, this could, of course, affect that as well, just like it does with us. And then, of course, central nervous system issues as well. What's interesting is how low of a dose is required for these problems to occur. 4 milligrams per kilogram. Now, if you're not sure what a kilogram is 2.2 pounds, right? So it doesn't take much for 4 milligrams. A milligram is 1/1,000,000th of a kilogram. Okay, so only 4 millionths of a kilogram is required per kilogram. So if you have an 8-pound cat, 32 milligrams may be enough to really start causing problems. Of course, different cats, when we talk about these numbers, we're talking about averages. Well, your cat may be below average or above average, right? It may be more sensitive or less sensitive. It may not be average, right? So this is part of the problem when we start getting the numbers here. So don't think that because we're not treating the numbers, we're treating the cat, right? So that would be what your veterinarian's doing. And then what's interesting is how renal failure can occur at the cat at as low as 8 milligrams per kilogram. So this is serious. How about acetaminophen? We call that, of course, Tylenol would be one of the main brand names for acetaminophen. And sometimes owners may give them to the cat again. And, of course, vomiting, depression, difficulty breathing, extremity swelling. That's kind of unusual. Liver issues. Of course, acetaminophen is processed in our livers. And then, of course, bleeding in the cat as well. And what's interesting is one adult tablet, that means if an adult tablet that we would take, I mean, someone my age, right? I'm old here, but an adult dose, one adult tablet could be lethal to a cat. So that is pretty serious. And so obviously some of these problems would occur if a cat only maybe ate half or a quarter of a capsule, right? This is where things get really, really scary when you think of one adult tablet, which we think isn't very much, but that could be lethal for a cat. Okay, so that could be quite serious. Here we go. All right, now we're finally, in terms of this particular survey that they did, the number 9 was anticoagulant rodenticides. And so I have this wrong. People are not giving, I've got to correct that. I should have corrected that. Owners are not giving their cats anticoagulant rodenticides, so ignore that. But nevertheless, the symptoms that can result if a cat is exposed to anticoagulant rodenticides would be lethargy, weakness, difficulty breathing, bleeding in any location, right? Because anticoagulants affect systemically, right? And so typically you may not see any bleeding with an animal that's exposed, but if you bruise it, now that blood, there may be bleeding internally, and that's where the lameness comes in, because if the cat has maybe a bruise in a joint and that begins to fill up with blood because they're not clotting well, now all of a sudden they have like an arthritis or it's stiff, so they're not able to move easily. And this can certainly happen. It could theoretically happen with secondary poisoning, right? So you're poisoning rodents, and all of a sudden the cat is maybe consuming some of the sick or injured rodents that have started to take the anticoagulant, because they don't die right away, right? So they may slow down and make it easier for the cat to capture the rodent. Now the cat is getting a secondary exposure to those rodenticides, and if a cat is consuming enough of those, maybe they're starting to get some of these symptoms. So this is where there could be you're the cause of the cat's problem, right? So this is where things get kind of dicey. What's number 10? Well, I was kind of surprised to see this, amphetamines. But when I looked at the section, it was like, oh, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. And so amphetamines are used for a variety of things. Back in the early 2000s, people would have some of the over-the-counter type products that would be used to help them with weight loss. You may remember the old weight loss, those of you old enough to remember those weight loss medications that you could take that would kind of help speed you up a little bit. A lot of I think that stuff is off the market now. But then, of course, you also have prescribed amphetamines for a variety of medical conditions. And then, of course, you have the illicit versions. These are things sold on the street that are illegal, right? So this is so cats can't control who their owner is, right? So if their owner is someone who's doing drugs and they like to use amphetamines, the cat may be exposed to someone maybe cutting it on the table before they begin to ingest it, and maybe they walk through it and lick their paws, and all of a sudden they're being exposed to the amphetamine powder, right? So ecstasy was one of the items that was mentioned in this particular article. So again, what were the symptoms? Well, it makes kind of sense. Just like it's speed for us, it could be speed for your cat as well. Agitation, overheating, where the cat is, or their metabolic system's moving too quickly, and now they're starting to overheat. You have tremors, seizures, depression, rapid heartbeat, obviously, and then, of course, at the end, coma, right? So the cat could ultimately perhaps die from this type of an exposure. So a lot of stuff going on here in terms of these particular drugs. So what do I want you to keep in mind as the bottom line? Number one, recognize that the data that for this article occurred from the clinic's encounters over the previous 4 years. So that would have been 2000, probably 2001 to 2005, and then they published in 2006, right? So the top 10 exposures or toxicosis exposures today would likely be different. So my point here is not for you to think, okay, this is the top 10 that we have today. Probably not. And the reason is because our use of rodenticides is changing, partly due to higher regulations. For example, back in the early 2000s, bromethylene probably wasn't as used as, I'm assuming, was not used as much as it is today. For example, you have California, for example, that has essentially made anticoagulant use hard to do, and it's really limited the use of anticoagulants. So people are moving into other rodenticide active ingredients, bromethylene being one of those, right? So there's another article that I'm familiar with where it talks about how there's a growing number of primary and secondary exposures with bromethylene, for example. So these are concerns, or maybe I should say suspected bromethylene secondary exposures. So these are definitely of concern. So don't get hung up on the 10. I want you to understand that when a cat is exhibiting certain symptoms, there can be a variety of potential causes, and it requires someone who has, the veterinary training and the medical skill and knowledge to differentiate what the ultimate cause is. So when you get that call, or if you get that call, understand it may not be your rodenticide that's causing it. So don't simply go to the dark place and think you're at fault. You might be at fault. I can't rule that out, of course. I'm not there. But nevertheless, there may be other things involved. So it may be a confounding effect, right? It may be your rodenticide. It may be another product in the house. There could be multiple causes, right? It's not always just one. So in that sense, think clearly, talk to the professionals in your life. I've already mentioned your insurance agent and, of course, your lawyer. Be polite to your client or the caller, whoever is making the complaint. Take good notes. Document. Be careful what you say. Let things sort of play out before you begin to say that you are responsible, because you may not be responsible. Okay, it may have been, they may have said, you visited my property today, the cat's acting weird, your fault, when it's the lily that the cat was eating a few days earlier. It's complicated, right? So this is something just for you as an owner to be aware of the complexity involved with these types of accusations or these types of issues when they occur. It may not be you. So be careful out there. Of course, always make sure you're following the label, and I would suggest go beyond the label, right? So just because something is legal doesn't always make it wise. So be careful, do what's right, and move ahead. All right, so that's it for this weekend. Of course, my name is Stephen Vantassel. I'm the owner of Wildlife Control Consultant. Hope you enjoyed this particular podcast. If you did, take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. You can give me suggestions for new shows. Perhaps you have questions that you would like to ask, and even criticisms. You can send those along as well. Until next time, I hope you all take care. Be careful out there. Take care, everybody. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant Podcast. Vertebrate pest control is an inherently dangerous activity involving risk of bodily injury to you, others, and/or property. Vertebrate pest control also involves legal issues, so be sure to always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods when controlling pests. Wildlife Control Consultant LLC, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their affiliates are not responsible for your use of the information provided here. Always consult a qualified and appropriate professional before employing the information provided here.